everyone. Thanks for joining us for our TCS Live today. We are talking about reaching the world through missionaries. And with me today, I got to point the other way, is a pastor at my church, and his name is Bob Fukumoto. And he's going to be sharing his journey through reaching others in the world through missionary work. And so, thanks for joining us, Pastor Bob.
Thank you for having me.
And so, well, why don't you tell us all about who you are, and what you've been up to?
Okay, first of all, I'm a grandpa. I've retired from missions back in 2020, I guess, and
2020, I think you said,
after
yeah.
being involved there for 15 years, um, I have three adult children, um, six grandchildren. I don't know if it's possible to pull that
Oh,
uh,
yes, let's put
picture
up
up.
that
Yeah.
family pic.
So this is my family. My wife passed away 4 years ago, and these are my three kids are the three closest to the top, son and two daughters, and that's all their kids, and very thankful and happy to have them around me.
Awesome.
Um, what else can I say? The I got called back out of retirement to be a pastor at Richview Church, where Christine and I met, and so I've been doing that for about a year and a half. And um, even though I think they asked me to come back because I'm old, and our we have three pastors on staff, and they're all like 33 years old. So they needed to bring the average age up, I think, to give more credibility. I'm
Well,
just
and you
joking.
have it's the wisdom that you bring, and that was why I thought of you, because I recently started going to Richview Church sometime last year, and one of the first couple of services you were on and just sharing about all of the different missions that projects that the church is involved in, and I was just blown away,
Hmm.
um, especially that you yourself usually, there a church will have mission projects, but no one's really involved. They kind of send people, and then you maybe hear from these people once in a blue moon, and you kind of they're kind of names on paper, but here you were just sharing your personal experience, and I was blown away by that. And so I think they're richly blessed to have
Yeah,
someone with your wisdom and your expertise in this field, and all that you bring to the table. So,
thank you. Thank you. So I got involved in missions. I'd been a pastor, I'd been a youth worker. Actually, no matter what area I found myself in, I always found myself drawn towards like high school kids, college age, and young adults. So I was actually a pastor at Richview like 30 years ago, and that was my portfolio. We had with was high school, college, and young adults, and it's hard to imagine, Christine, but our youth retreats, we would have like 60 kids
wow.
on these things, and so it was quite thriving at that time. But my last ministry before missions was I worked at a Christian camp called Muskoka Woods,
Hmm.
and we wanted to do some development with our summer staff. So we took 10 summer staff to work in a couple of orphanages in Romania back in 2001.
Hmm.
As soon as I was there, I knew I was drawn to this um, type of work because I just felt so alive in a way, like spiritually, that I wasn't up to that point.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so this here is a picture of our campus. We bought a farm back in 2018, and the farmhouse to the left, we renovated that, but it really wasn't um, strong enough to do any like renovations or
Mhm.
additions. So we actually built a brand new farmhouse to the right there that accommodates 20 people in the upstairs. It's very
Mhm.
modern. I'll be actually going there in June,
Oh, nice.
taking a team. Um, but our next project is where there's a barn at the back behind
That
the
red,
the red roof one.
yeah.
Um, we're going to knock that down. I'm not sure if we're going to replace or we're going to put a new building right there, but we're going to put a new building up that is more of a multi-purpose facility. It's really basically going to be a big hall that
Mhm.
because we're quite involved with special needs children with exceptionalities
Hmm.
and adults, and some of them are arriving in wheelchairs and et cetera. So we really our next building really has to be super accessible um, for special needs children and adults. Um, so so that's our next project, building project this year. But on this property, we bring in children. We have a pool of about 350 orphans
Wow.
that we work with, spread out over 15 plus group homes and three bigger orphanages that really just accommodate special needs uh, children now and adults. So we bring them in for at this point we're really only equipped to do day events with them.
Mhm.
So we actually have vans that will go pick them up, bring them in, uh, and we'll our tagline really is come to Borsha. That's the village that this is in. Come to Borsha, experience God, experience family, and experience
Mm.
work. And we do, you know, train them to do chores and um, uh, but we also do a lot of family things like uh, food preparation, eating, cleanup. We play games um,
Fun.
with whoever comes on the property. We have a sharing time, like a family meeting where kids can share about their lives and
Oh.
and the adults listen. You know, um,
Oh.
so we're creating sort of an orphan community,
Yeah.
and so we have in total 350 a pool of 350 orphans. We have about 35 volunteers and about 8 staff,
Wow.
and so that's our community. And
Awesome.
yeah,
We have a few more, yeah, we have a
yeah.
few more picks, and then, um, I mean, it's wonderful to have this opportunity to just give them all these experiences
Hmm.
where they wouldn't have, normally.
No, and especially during COVID, they were really locked up.
Yeah.
So this is the schematic of the new multi-purpose building
Okay.
that we want to build.
This looks like great community time. Like, it's wonderful.
Pizza's always a hit.
I can imagine.
So these are, some of the children, and these children especially never get out.
Mhm.
Um, so it's for them to get out and breathe fresh air and experience nature and you know fresh food and that kind of thing. Um, so this must have been around October last year. With you can see the pumpkins
The
and the hay
pumpkins.
bales and that.
It's a beautiful grounds.
Yeah, it's about 5 acres, and it's
Cool.
just on the outer limits of the municipality of the village of Borsa, and that's in northwest Romania. It's in a region called Transylvania, and so
Oh,
everyone has heard of Transylvania because of Dracula
yeah.
but and Dracula was actually a real person, um, but the fictional version of Dracula was very, very loosely based on um, a Romanian king by the name of
Mhm.
Vlad Tepes, but his
Mhm.
name was actually Vlad the Impaler. He was quite cruel,
Yeah.
and so they kind of took that character. The author took the character of the real life character and made him into another version of that, which is
Not
totally like
accurate.
not even close, really.
As fair, yeah, as it goes.
Yeah, but
Whatever will sell.
there is a Transylvania.
Yes, I did know that, and that's pretty cool that, bring God to that part of the
Yeah,
world.
yeah, for
We
sure.
do have a video. Why don't we,
Hmm.
look at that now before we go forward? This is a
Sure.
little, clip of the ministry.
Okay.
We have had the privilege of caring for institutionalized children for over 20 years, and we learned that more than being visited and having immediate needs met, orphans benefit most from a healthy community where they experience long-term relationships, they are given responsibility, and have a sense of belonging. In order to facilitate that, several years ago we embarked on a new adventure to create this special place called the Family Farm. Just a half-hour drive from the city of Cluj, the family farm sits on a beautiful piece of land in rural Romania. Kids love it here and can't get enough of the country life with all the blessings of the outdoors. We cook meals and eat together, do housework and gardening. We play sports and participate in practical and creative workshops that help kids discover their unique gifts and abilities. We read books by the fire, celebrate birthdays and other important milestones, just like any other family. Our community offers respect and stability, care, and friendship. Everyone is welcome to participate, young and old, families, professionals, and retired people. We learn from each other, we grow together, and our hope is that all involved are transformed in the process, because no one is too rich to receive or too poor that they don't have something to give.
That's just beautiful. And what an incredible opportunity. I was thinking, did you have, was it a struggle to find, volunteers or helpers to get this off
No,
the ground? No?
no. I mean, this kind of evolved over the years.
Mhm.
We first went in 2001, and all we were really doing was um, uh, just serving orphans, doing orphan retreats, like
Mhm.
vacation Bible school things.
Yeah.
We had camp, a week camp, and that eventually built up to like 4 weeks of camp.
Wow.
And because our kind of programming, even though it's Christian, orphanages were like knocking our doors down, wanting to send their kids because they
Nice.
didn't have anything like that at all. And of course, it
Wow.
was free because we
Yep.
paid for everything.
Yep.
But it got to the point where we were doing was trying to giving orphans things. We
Yeah.
weren't really helping them for the long term. And
Mhm.
so I was actually at a ministry called Teen Challenge in London,
Heard of those, yeah.
visiting where they do rehab for people with drug addiction and things like that. But the interesting thing that they do is them they put their clients uh, they have to work a number of hours every day out in the field,
Okay.
and there was an amazing success rate and progress rate when you actually brought work into the equation. And so we realized around 2015 that we needed to buy a place and create
Mhm.
that work environment and that family environment. We call it the family farm.
Mhm.
Um, and and that has been so successful in helping our giving creating an arena um, for God, family, and work to
Mm.
coexist and to work together. So our foundation in Romania is called Pas cu Pas, which means step by step
Nice.
in Romanian. So yeah, the
Wow.
that's the that's the ministry.
It's amazing. And the reason why we wanted to showcase your example and others, and I'll ask Steph, who is in the background, she's still here, to just put on our theme page for this month, and we are focusing on missionary work because a lot of our audience who are homeschoolers, a lot of them are um, involved. Either they're actually on the mission field somewhere in the world,
Mm,
or they're thinking about it, or it's something that they've done in the past and maybe they want their children to do that. It is an option that many take once they finish those high school years, and okay, now what do we do? And then they'll hop off onto a mission trip. And so there's a lot of things to consider. And so what would you tell our viewers about pursuing missionary work?
well, I think my first exposure to missionary work was when missionaries would come to the church, and then when and it was intriguing to me.
Hmm.
Actually read, a couple of biographies of
Yeah.
missionaries. The one that stands out the most to me is Hudson Taylor, and it's
Okay.
called Hudson Taylor's Spiritual Secret. Um, and I think it
I
was
haven't read
written by
that one.
I think it was written by his son. But
Okay.
uh, but then when I became a youth pastor um, back in the late '80s, and one of the things I would do would be to bring in missionaries to our youth. I ran a bit of a youth church, and
Mhm.
uh, for young people, and I would bring in a missionary sometimes to speak, give a presentation, and so and so we would do this. I wasn't really drawn to missions myself, to be honest with you. As a matter of fact, I remember praying in my 20s. I became a Christian when I was around 22 or 23, and I remember praying to God in my 20s, Lord, I'll serve you anywhere, but could
Mhm.
it please be in Etobicoke? You
Yeah.
know, and because I'm not that adventurous, to be honest with you, and so the fact that I'm in missions, now, and I've been to Romania over 60 times. It's like it's quite it's humorous. But anyways, I would bring in these missionaries, and this one I remember we got involved with um, a ministry working with uh, special needs adults called Christian Horizons,
Okay.
and and they needed some people to come up to help them run their camp for adults up in Muskoka around Bracebridge. And I really wasn't that interested myself, but my wife, was a special needs teacher, she
Mm.
said, "Bob, we got to do this." Okay, fine. Like so.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
we organized it. We took 18 of our youth, and we ran the camp for 3 weeks.
Wow.
And to this day, that working with that demographic was the
Mhm.
hardest mission experience I've ever had.
Mhm.
Um, it was very difficult. But the funny thing is that two of those 18 young people took on that as a career,
Very nice.
went into that because of that exposure. And
Mhm.
so the moral of that story is for young people today, get exposure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And short-term missions are a great way to do that, something reputable. Um, you know, yeah, it's we've had to Romania. I've done, you know I don't know how many, like, I would say 50 trips in since 2001. And we've taken over 300 people.
Wow.
And a number of them have gone like 5 times. So
Oh, wow.
300 different people, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's just getting that exposure and getting a little taste of what it's like. And if it's for you, and maybe
Yeah.
some buttons will get pushed inside you that, will point you in that direction.
Yeah. It's it's I was thinking about this morning, and it's sort of like you. I didn't think I don't think that well, I probably should I should say never, but I really feel like I'm supposed to be planted where, and to work where he plants me. And so, and I've traveled quite a bit within the province, for sure. And so you just kind of I've just learned to just, okay, find the work where I am.
Hmm.
And I don't think I see myself going abroad.
Yeah.
Um but I mean, when you're following God, you can't say never, right?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, no, you have to be open, and you have to give them a blank check kind of thing. As a matter of fact,
Exactly.
the most dangerous prayer you can pray is, Lord,
Lord,
don't
send
send
me.
me there, you
Because he
know?
will. Yeah, yeah. I remember my mom was saying the same thing when I was a little girl. She always kind of saw herself doing, helping the poor children, or she just had this vision of helping poor children somewhere in the world, but not, this place or
Yeah,
not that place.
yeah.
Because, just different reasons why, depending on what the place is. And I'm like, as I grew older, I'm like, I don't think we can say that to God, right? We can't. I mean, we can say it, but then are we really truly uh letting the Lord lead us, right?
Yeah, and
So
but the Lord knows that. Like, even praying a goofy prayer like I did in my 20s, the Lord knows me,
it's true.
and He doesn't necessarily make it all happen at once. He doesn't change you all at once.
Yeah, it's
It
true.
normally it's over years, and you change your perspective, you change your and quite possibly you become more open to the Lord, to the point where you will say, "Hey, here's a blank check, Lord, you know, fill it out the way that you want to," kind of thing. And um, and that is a very safe place to be, in the middle of God's will,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, for sure. For sure. And you had some great questions to ask ourselves, especially those who were considering, just they were
Yes.
about getting started in missionary work.
Yeah. So keep in mind that I am a very old person, and so I'm 67 years old, and I've already retired once. But but the funny thing is I've done a bunch of different things. I worked for a Christian youth organization called Youth for Christ for eight
Mhm.
years. I was a pastor at Richview in youth ministry, and then an associate um, at during that time for another 8 or 9 years. I was a lead pastor. And then I worked at a Christian camp for 8 years called Muskoka Woods, and then I was in missions for 15. But
Mhm.
somewhere around when I was 42 or something, I realized that no matter what I did, no matter what job title I had, I always liked doing the same thing, and
Yeah.
that was discipling people,
Mhm.
developing people, pointing them to God, um, mentoring, this kind of work. And for the large part, that's what I do at Richview. Because they asked me to come back, and I said, well, I don't really want a job, but if I come back, this is what I have to contribute, and it's in the area of discipleship, and so. I'm involved in discipling the leadership. But I say all that to say this, is that it's a journey to find out for most people what God is calling you to.
Yeah.
And it does have to be a call.
Yeah.
So here's some helpful questions to that end.
Mhm.
So my first question is, how do you think God has gifted you? And so,
That's
I'm
important.
not sure about your age, but if you're quite young, listen to the way that you get affirmed by your teachers, by your parents, by your relatives. If you're involved in any kind of community extracurricular activities, whatever it would be, what do people say around you about you? Because I remember when I was 15, this family said to me, "Bob, you're really good with kids." And then when I started going to church after I became a Christian, people would say, a couple people would comment, "Bob, you're really good with young people. You should go consider youth ministry."
Mhm.
So that was my first really
It's a good
experience,
clue.
because my parents were not affirming. Like I grew up in a pretty harsh family, and
Mhm.
it was all mainly criticism.
Mhm.
Not that I didn't deserve it, but you know, but if that's all you get, you're kind of not going to learn anything, right?
It's true.
So how do you think God has gifted you? That's the first question. The
Mhm.
second question is, what do you like to do? Like, how do
Yeah.
you feel God's pleasure? There was a
Yeah.
movie back in my day called Chariots of Fire,
Oh, yeah.
and there was an Olympic runner who was a believer, and and
Mhm.
and 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 he was slated to go into the 100-meter, and he was the top 100-meter runner that was known at that time. But then he didn't run because the trials were on Sunday.
Yep.
And in that day, so they said, okay, well, maybe you could switch to the 400-meter, and which was on a different day. He ended up running that. He ended up winning it, the
Yeah.
Olympic gold for Great Britain. Um, but his sister, who worked at a mission, would say to him, like, why are you spending all this time running and training? You should be down with me at the mission, you know? And he said, Eric Liddell's response was classic. He said, I know God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I
Ah,
and when I run, I feel God's pleasure.
yeah.
And so, what do you like to do? How do you feel God's pleasure? Uh, it could be in computer work. It could be in sports. It could be in music. It could be um, in leadership. It could be with people. It could be helping people. I know some people that all they do is they help seniors, and they spend time with seniors, listening to seniors. Like, why? Because they like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Oh, I hope there's no seniors listening. Um, I mean, I don't mind it, but that's not the
Not what
thing
you're called to do.
that's not my thing, right? So that's question number two. What do you like to do? Another question is, where has God given you success?
Mhm.
Um, because normally, if you're succeeding at something, you do feel good about it, and normally you're good at it. And so, and that those good things that are happening, that's God-given success. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
where has God given you success? Like, maybe it's in sports, maybe it's in in computer work, or even having that curiosity. Maybe it's in writing. I have friends who are journalists, and they're extremely good at it.
Mhm.
Um, the last thing is, what are you hungry for?
Mm.
Like, what's yearning inside? And like, funny enough, I know people who become missionaries. They initially got involved in missions because they like traveling.
Ah.
They liked the thought of going to Europe. They liked the thought of going to Africa. They liked the thought of even going to Florida. So it's like, um, that can be sometimes the first step. This sense of I like adventure. You know, that was the initial turn up. That's why I prayed like I did when I was in my 20s because I
Mhm.
didn't like travel. I didn't like being away from home. I didn't like um, eating weird food and whatever. I actually just like playing hockey in Etobicoke. So, um, I had a pretty narrow kind of vision for my life, but what are you hungry for? Well, I would say for me, I'm hungry to be with people. I'm
Yeah.
extremely extroverted. I really like uh, um, I like meeting with people at Tim Hortons and you know listening to the story and helping them with their families, and I just like being out there. You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are the four questions. How do you think God has gifted you? What do you like to do? Where has God given you success? And what are you hungry for? Um,
Those are great. I mean, I while you were asking those questions, I was like, check, 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 check for my own life because I feel
mm,
like that's where, like, I'm where I need to be right
yeah,
now in my life and doing the things that make me smile because I'm doing what I'm passionate about. And
yeah.
so yeah, thank you for those questions. And I hope you all are watching. You're taking these questions down, and I mean, these don't just apply to missionary work. These apply to just in general
Any
of
vocation, because
yeah.
really, when it comes down to it, if you're going to be a computer engineer, that's a calling too, because you're called
Exactly.
into that work, you're called into that community, you're going to be interacting with other extremely bright people
Yeah.
in math,
Hmm.
that is,
Hmm.
and God wants you to be involved in their lives. So
Exactly.
it is a
Yeah.
calling. It is a calling,
Well,
and as Christine and I were talking earlier, the whole calling to missions is it needs to be a calling of God
yeah.
because it's not easy, and you will go through difficulties and hardships, um, disappointments, where you don't want to be wavering in second guessing yourself. Am I supposed to be here?
Hmm.
Well, when
Hmm.
you're 5,000 miles away, not a good time to be asking that.
Yeah.
No.
True. Very true. We did have a question come in. We
Mhm.
haven't forgotten about you. So it's up on the screen here. What recommendations do you have for getting a 9-year-old into mission work or at least exposure to it for a short term?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the opportunities for a 9-year-old aren't great. Normally, they start to crop up around high school, but
Mhm.
getting involved with people, like whether it be your church's VBS program or Sunday school
That's a good
or
one.
camp, you know,
Mhm.
if you're 9 years old, you get to go to a camp, for example, or working with people in the church. Uh, that's the first step, really,
Mm.
in being involved. Missions is being involved with people,
Yes.
and so for a 9-year-old to get out there and be involved in your church, be involved in your um, when the time comes, junior high or Sunday school or whatever it would be. um, get
Yeah.
involved, have fun, be helpful, you know enjoy the experience.
I think all churches would have some sort of missionary Sunday or missions Sunday.
Mhm.
When they do a special offering, just little things like that. Um, I know at Richview, my kids came home with a little box to save, their little pennies and
Mhm.
whatnot. Well, sorry, we don't do pennies anymore.
Yeah.
Dimes and nickels. But and it's just that just to get them thinking about other people, and especially those who are less fortunate than they are, than we all are, and what we can do to
Mhm.
help with the gifts that we have. So it's just, I think I would recommend just looking for those little things.
Yeah, and also, you can read missionary biographies too. I mean, they do
Yes.
have, you know, books that are yeah, for
These are
especially.
these are our favorite ones that we've read. This one
Oh yeah.
especially.
Yeah.
And I think this one's related to, the orphanage work in this story. And I
Yeah.
know many of you have, let me see if I can get this in the camera properly, the Christian Heroes Then and Now series. I know
Mhm.
a lot of homeschoolers have been reading these and keeping up to date with these, and the Torchlighter series.
Mhm.
You can also get missionary stories as well. And then the one that you mentioned, I'm going to be looking for Hudson Taylor's Spiritual Secret.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking for those.
Yeah. But those books that you showed looked awesome, and
They are, they
for
are, and
kids.
they're really great to read. And I can't remember the other one. Um, oh, I can't remember his name right now. William.
William Carey.
Yes, William Carey. His one was a great story too.
Mhm. A
So
lot of them. A lot of them do. There's a book on Amy Carmichael's story.
yes,
You know,
yes.
there's a lot of missions biographies that are wonderful. Hmm.
Um, Anything else that has come to mind that you wanted to share? We'll probably wrap up now, but I just wanted to give you one last opportunity as my kids are going squirrely right now.
Yeah. Um, I don't really have anything that comes to my mind. I mean, it's a pleasure to be here with you
Hmm.
folks and sharing. And I, you know, when I first went on a mission trip, um, I really wasn't looking forward to the mission trip itself. I
Hmm.
actually was looking forward to coming back a different person. And I thought that going on a mission trip was sort of a necessary evil, so to speak. Um, and I was never disappointed. I was never disappointed. Even the 60 plus times I've been to Romania, every time I get back on the plane to come home, it's like, thank you, Lord. I needed that because I live a soft life here. And when you see children, one of the experiences I'll tell you is that all orphanages in Romania are not created equal. They're funded
True.
differently and
True.
they're handled
Yeah.
differently. And this one that we would go to was actually a hospital for children who have a sibling who has tuberculosis, right? So
Wow.
what they do in Romania is if a kid comes down with TB, they keep that kid at home, that child at home, and they send the siblings to an orphanage, to a hot, to a, and so they get separated. And but at this one that we go to, only 40% of the kids there, the 100 kids there, are have that in their family, the illness. The other 60% are just parents that just drop off their kids because they can't afford them. They can't pay for them, and or
It's
they're
true.
going to just drop them off and go work in Italy or something. So,
Wow.
so I've been present when some children have been dropped off, and quite
Mm.
often, like the family has like 6 kids, and they just
Wow.
drop off 3 of them, and so the kids who get dropped off are just beside themselves. They're just that you can't console them when they
I
get
can
when they get
imagine.
dropped off, and it's like it's the worst thing you could ever witness, um,
Yeah.
from a relational, emotional standpoint. And you know, when you see things like that, and you come back to Toronto, you go like, "Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I have no idea
Yeah.
how some people suffer
Yeah.
and live." You know, so it's just really really important to have that kind of exposure, right?
And I think even too for that 9-year-old, um to if you got documentaries, through your church, or even those torchlighter videos, or some of these missionary stories out there, read those stories to your kids, because
Mhm.
they need to know, especially, how we live here in Canada. We are spoiled
Yeah,
in terms of, how we enjoy certain things in life here, and it's we do forget, right? We do forget that other people out there do not have what we have.
yeah,
And so it's so good to have that reminder, and then be grateful, and grateful to
yeah.
God for the benefits that we have, and
So,
for the opportunities that we can to help those, who don't have.
yeah, ultimately, missions is it's a spiritual challenge that will bring you ultimately closer to God. And if I could sum it up in one sentence, I think that would be it. Is it, and it would be a challenge, and it would be. It's definitely an adventure. It's a spiritual adventure too. But ultimately, you will have to trust God. And
Mhm.
and in our world, we don't really have to a lot of the time.
Yeah,
So you're kind of putting yourself out there as far as God is concerned, right?
it's true.
But He will never, ever leave you hanging.
It's
So
Yeah, that's a great promise to hold on to. He's there every step of the way.
mhm,
So if you are, I hopefully you are listening, whether you're watching now or watching a little bit later, I hope that you've been encouraged. And hey, if you have more questions, send them along to us, and we can reach out to Pastor Bob anytime and get some, so if you have specific questions. And definitely check out our theme page for some more encouraging stories, and articles on this topic of reaching the world, and getting involved in missionary work. And just thanks for being here, Pastor Bob. And I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing, all of your wisdom with us. And hopefully, we can have you back on again.
sure, anytime.
All right, we will sign off for now, and we will see you in another 2 weeks. Bye for now.
Thank you.